What is going on, guys? Week 15 already. Kind of a weird week, but a lot to talk about. Thanks for being with us. I think it's a 2-minute warning. Last time I checked, maybe I missed a little bit of it, but we'll keep rolling right through halftime and then kind of see where this thing leads us. Thanks for everyone for being here again with us. Yeah, you said it, man. In the chat, Six Sniper, low-scoring week incoming. Totally agree with you, man. We're missing a lot of these teams that we normally have on the main slates. We don't have Christian McCaffrey. We don't have Todd Gurley. Like all these players. Like obviously the KC game going on right now. Even like the Saints guys. Like there's so many high-scoring offenses that are not on this main slate. It's kind of a bummer, honestly, because it is the slate where the live final will be happening. Like there's just so much to talk about for sure, but I do think that we need to brace ourselves a little bit for kind of a lower scoring week. Totally agree with you there. Just want to shout out a few people from earlier today. Got a few follows, a couple subs as well. So Gridiron727, welcome, man. Thanks for being with us. Kevin Sports Geek, shout out Kev. Kev's helped me a ton with the YouTube side of things. So happy that he's going to check out Twitch. Not sure if he's in the chat yet, but at some point we will get him on a live stream. Kev's the man. Kev knows a ton about. Kev's been doing video longer than almost anyone. So it's great to have him kind of on our team and helping us out. Doozy's got a 1.6 cash going in Showdown instead of Dust. Hey, Dust is never good, man. So I'm glad things are going better. Tough night in NHL last night for sure on the Showdown side of things. So was able to make some of it back on tiers. For those of you that don't care about any of that, you're probably just here for NFL. Come join us throughout the week. We're grinding a lot of other sports, a lot of niche sports. I'm doing a 10K to 100K challenge with only niche games. So things like Showdown, tiers. I'm doing that only with NHL and NBA, and then prop bets as well. So gonna have a lot more prop bet type content as we progress, kind of towards the end of NFL for sure. But yeah, let's jump right into this NFL slate since it's getting closer to halftime. Hopefully we have a few more people kind of trickle in here, but yeah, it's an interesting one. So let's jump over, see what Vegas has to say about all this first. All right, like I said, 11 games on this slate. There is one game at the top that stands above the rest as far as the over-unders. We do have the Pittsburgh Steelers that are hosting the New England Patriots. So I have a lot to say about this game, honestly. I think that the big storyline, at least for me, is trying to figure out what's going on with Juju Smith-Schuster and Antonio Brown. Will Bill Belichick actually decide to try and take away Antonio Brown, or is he going to try and take away Juju, who's obviously been on just a tear? So it'll be really interesting to see what happens on that for sure. Kev is in the chat. What's up, man? Hey, I was just saying all these nice things about you, and you rolled in late, but you do got the Twitch Prime sub going now though, so that's good. Hang on, we gotta show Kev Sports Geek some of the cool stuff that we have going here now. Let's go back to the first intro. All the custom graphics are going. Wait for it. There we go. All right, just wanted to show Kev that quick. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot to talk about, guys. So I would expect this game to be relatively popular, but it is kind of hard to figure out where the chalk is going to go as far as that top game. I actually think that this Dallas and Colts game will be a lot more popular. I think that anytime we get the Colts in the dome, it's an interesting situation. But this Dallas defense has been playing a lot better per lately. So I think that they're interesting for sure. We'll talk about some more kind of plays. There's actually some really cheap plays in this Cincinnati and Oakland game that I'm really interested in as well. But per usual, we're gonna kind of focus a little bit more on kind of game flow, game environment, not so much on just individual plays. So let's move it over to that spreadsheet that we normally look at today. All right, so this is something that Twitch subscribers do have access to. I will update this tonight and then again on Sunday morning. Just allocating a bunch of different stats that I really value at each position. So I really think that at the quarterback position, the most important thing is trying to target quarterbacks in good game environments. So really trying to look at pace and also what's going to happen at the line of scrimmage. The one thing that really affects efficiency, and efficiency is by far the most important thing that you're looking for at the quarterback position. And the thing that affects that the most is if they're going to see pressure, if they're not going to see pressure. So I've kind of gone through and I take a bunch of different pressure metrics. I take the offensive line, defensive line metrics at Pro Football Focus. I take adjusted sack rate at Football Outsiders. I use some of the Sports Info Solutions pressure ratings, and then I come up with the number, and it's basically a rating based on the offensive line versus the defensive line. So the top matchup at the line of scrimmage is Pittsburgh against New England. New England just hasn't been pressuring very well. This probably says a lot more about how well Pittsburgh's offensive line has played. Pittsburgh's passing more than any team in the league over the past 3 weeks, so definitely think that that's notable on the Roethlisberger side of things. But honestly, the quarterback that I'm probably the most interested in, at least he's at the top of my model, Lamar Jackson. I think that this game environment looks extremely strong. So he is 5,900. I mean, it's kind of tough to get to a guy like Lamar Jackson who doesn't have as much upside through the air, of course. When we have some of these other guys that are really close, we have Andrew Luck, obviously only 500 more. Kirk Cousins in a really good spot. But on Lamar Jackson's side of things, obviously we can project him probably for the most rushing yards on the entire slate, arguably between him and Josh Allen. But before we get to Josh Allen, I do have a lot to say about him as well. But Lamar Jackson, as far as just looking at this game, most plays on both the team and the game side of things, the offensive line matchup, very strong. Obviously, it's Tampa Bay, it's Oakland, it's these teams that don't pressure very well. They always seem to kind of perform, be really good matchups, at least for this metric in particular. So definitely think Lamar's going to have some time. He's actually been relatively strong under pressure this year. Not that he's going to see a ton of it this week, but home favorite, 27.25 team total, pretty strong. And yeah, they're about 8-point favorites at this moment. So I definitely think Lamar's really interesting at 5,900. That rushing upside is something that I certainly value at the quarterback position. So we probably should talk about Josh Allen for 100 less. I've definitely missed out on these weeks from Josh Allen for sure. I never can quite get there with the team total that Buffalo carries most weeks is always extremely low. And if you guys have been with us for any extended period of time, I'm never really on the team that plays Detroit. They play ball control. They're always trying to slow down the pace. It's just a really tough environment. So I get it. Buffalo's at home. It is a pretty decent pass funnel situation if Buffalo does decide to throw a little bit. But Baltimore and Buffalo, two of the three most run-heavy offenses in the league over the past 3 weeks. So yeah, do I think that he's going to go ahead and keep rushing for massive yardage totals on the ground? It's possible, but Detroit's actually been one of the best teams in the entire league at limiting quarterbacks in the run game. So basically, they play a lot of zone defense, kind of keep the line of scrimmage in front of them. There's gonna be a ton of eyes basically looking at the line of scrimmage, just waiting for Josh Allen to take off. There's a bunch of guys that have really struggled to put up rushing numbers against them. Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson, like Detroit's been pretty elite at stopping these guys. So yeah, I mean, Josh Allen, his second read is always to run. So I definitely think that it's still possible that he's going to have a lot of attempts in this game. I just don't think, I think this is where you jump off. If you've been on the Josh Allen train, I think that I'm probably going to jump off. Pretty good point by the real Josh in the chat, actually. He was saying that it's possible Lamar could be lower owned, but he actually wishes that Flacco was starting. Yeah, so Flacco, if you guys didn't hear, he will be the backup. He's healthy, but he will back up Lamar. So they're going with Lamar in this spot. I mean, pretty great matchup against Tampa Bay, like I said. So I really like Lamar quite a bit. D-Shore, we'll get to running backs. Are we just plugging in Barkley and Elliott? Are we playing one of them? Which one is it? We'll talk about it. Six Sniper says that Zeke is greater than Saquon. Joe says, or the real Josh says Mixon greater than Zeke. greater than Saquon. We'll get to running back, guys. Running back's always a pretty big part of this show too, but I do want to start on the game environment stuff. So on the other side of kind of the spectrum as far as offensive line versus defensive line matchups, at least for guys that we may be considering, I don't know. I don't think that it's Aaron Rodgers' week, guys. Against Chicago, they are on the road. Aaron Rodgers has actually been pretty brutal under pressure this year, to be completely honest with you guys, as far as his yards per attempt. Almost 3 yards per attempt less while under pressure. So I do think there's going to be some pass attempts in that game. I would expect Green Bay to be extremely low owned in this spot if you're looking for kind of some leverage from an ownership perspective, but I honestly don't think that I will be there. So yeah, I mean, 5,700 for Aaron Rodgers, it's a great price if you kind of are on a team defense doesn't matter. I get it from that perspective, but yeah, stuff at the line of scrimmage, that definitely matters. So yeah, not really on that. So that's one of the ones that I think that I will be avoiding as far as those type of spots. But yeah, so outside of that, guys, like we're not really considering Tannehill, Carr, Eli Manning. At least I'm not. Josh Allen, again, like pretty tough matchup at the line of scrimmage for him. There's a couple other spots that I at least think are interesting, and I saw Six Sniper kind of talk about it in the chat as well. So Andrew Luck at home always feels like he should at least be in play, right? So if we're just looking at teams that are the most pass happy in the league over the past 3 weeks, I already talked about Roethlisberger. You can throw Matt Ryan into that mix as well. They're at home against Arizona, which is interesting. We'll talk about that. But Andrew Luck at 6,400, a little bit more than I'd like to pay for a guy that doesn't have a ton of rushing upside. But I do really like this game. It's one of those ones that doesn't really stand out in some of my metrics, but anytime we get him at home, love T.Y. Hilton. Still think that T.Y. Hilton's a little bit underpriced. And this is the defense that I am actually willing to target. So everyone wants to talk about how much better Dallas has been. I'm actually kind of with them for the most part on that. But I do think that we get Andrew Luck at home. It's still at least interesting. Another guy that I probably haven't played a ton of is on the other side of this game. So Dak Prescott. Probably one of the better spots, honestly, on this slate against Indy. I think it's interesting for sure. I mean, this Colts team it's one of the highest totals on the slate from a game flow perspective. But ever since Amari Cooper joined this offense, it's been completely different for Dak. So one of the things that I do think is interesting about this, it is a pretty clear pass funnel situation in favor of the Dallas passing game. So I at least think it's interesting. The pace stuff doesn't jump off the page or anything like that. And maybe that's point chasey a little bit. They are on the road, kind of a middling total, but at least the spread is somewhat tight. So hopefully we get a decent amount of back and forth in this one. So I think at quarterback, that's probably where I'm going to leave us for now. We should probably keep moving. I don't know how much longer we got before. Oh, okay. Halftime pretty much just started. Tons of time. Too much time, some may say. Steve Boyton says that Lamar's going to smash. I'm with you, man. I like them a lot. What are your thoughts on Carr this week? Yeah, probably not playing Carr. I get it. Cincinnati's been awful, but they are on the road. I definitely like the Cincinnati side of that game quite a bit more. Never jump off the Josh Allen train. Allie, what's going on? Thanks for being back with us. A lot of familiar faces in the chat, so appreciate you guys. A lot of people that are grinding NHL throughout the week, jumping back into NFL with us, so I love that. Let's see. Can you talk Dak? Yes, I think I touched on Dak. I think that, the Dallas stack is back in play. There's another wide receiver that I do want to talk about at some point that is not named Amari Cooper on that side of the ball, so I think that that's interesting. Wanted to captain Kirk Cousins this week, but his price is just a no. Yeah, I haven't checked the showdown prices yet on that. I'm actually going to be at the Vikings game this week. Got to change the mojo up a little bit, guys. Been a couple rough weeks in the 1500. Really got to change things up a little bit. So I will be at the game. Last time I had a big win in that tournament, I was at the game, just kind of basically making pivots on my phone. It's definitely not optimal, but hey, got to change some stuff up. All right, so let's move over to the running back position. Everyone wanted to talk about this before. And if we're just talking about pure projected touches, it's really hard to get away from Ezekiel Elliott. I think that I mentioned this a couple times, mentioned this on Pat Mayo's show earlier this week. We did kind of a first look. If you haven't checked that out, definitely check that out as well. But yeah, so Zeke, I think that I definitely underprojected or at least undervalued the way they're using him in the receiving game now. And it was a little bit late to the party on that. I had Zeke last week, obviously, if you were around for the Tuesday breakdown. But just the screen game that Dallas has right now is pretty elite, to be completely honest. And they're not scared to use them in that way. Now that they have at least another legitimate weapon with Amari Cooper, it's just leading to more and more kind of upside for this offense in general. So is a pretty decent matchup against Indy, 26th in DVOA against running backs in the passing game. So that's something that I do think matters. And then so road defenses in tight spreads at like slight road underdogs always seems to favor pass catching running backs for a few more targets. It's one of those trends you can run at Fantasy Labs. So definitely check that out as well. Just kind of a macro type thing. Tight spreads, kind of slight underdogs always seems to lead to a few more catches. So I think that that's interesting. Between him and Saquon, you guys already know my answer to this. Just play both. I think that I've probably gone on this rant. There's people in the chat that are tuning out because I say this pretty much every entire video, every video that I do, every stream that I do. But these guys are still undervalued, guys. 9K, 9,400. These guys should be over 10K just based on how they're used. They're basically seeing targets like number one wide receivers, and then getting insane usage in the red zone. Like, I'm gonna do everything I can to play both. So I definitely think that there's a chance that at least Zeke at 400 more will probably be a little bit higher owned, I would imagine, but I think it's going to be close. I mean, if OBJ doesn't play, it's just more kind of condensed target share, more for Saquon for sure. Definitely the game environment is better for Zeke. So it's interesting. Like Saquon against Tennessee. Tennessee is actually the third best team at defending running backs in the passing game, but not super worried about that, to be completely honest. Yes, I mean, I think both of them are fantastic plays. I think that Zeke is the one that we probably can't ignore. I mean, the guy had 40 touches last week. Just insane. Didn't even score a touchdown. I believe he scored. I had him. I don't even remember how many points he scored. He had 34 points on DraftKings without a touchdown. So we talked about with Caffrey and hitting the double bonus a couple weeks ago. Like, it's well within the realm of possibilities for both of these guys. Fully on board with Team Jam 'em in this week. Hey man, we're gonna be friends. I'm definitely on board. Always on board with Team Jam It In. No thanks on Saquon for me this week. Six Sniper, what's the reasoning, man? I'm curious. Talk me off of him. Would love to see a post in the Discord with some trends that are useful that you've created at Labs, and don't mind sharing the subs. It's a good idea, Josh. Always trying to think of different things I can do to provide the subscribers with value. We should do some trend stuff. That's a really good idea. I've got a ton of trends for some other sports, NFL. There's some great macro ones that you can create. So really good idea, man. If I don't do that, just definitely remind me. I'm the worst at forgetting stuff unless I write it down. Joe's with me on play all the top running backs. They should be 11K each. I'm with you, man. Hey, you guys have been listening to the streams, that's for sure. I'm aboard the running back train. Just need to hear those cheap wide receivers and tight ends so we can make it all happen. Hey, that's the problem, right? That's always the problem. Like, where do we pay down? So I think there's a couple spots that definitely make sense. We should talk about Joe Mixon though before we move on from running back. Clearly mispriced at 6,100. A guy that is seeing pretty insane usage in his own right. Definitely think that it's a game that sets up for points. If there's one game on the slate that I think that could go under-owned and go over, it's definitely Cincinnati at Oakland. Third most game plays on the slate. Definitely think that Joe Mixon has a chance to be a big part of that. They are home favorites in this game. I would expect them to continue to lean on him. And at 6,100, that was one of the prices that stood out quite a bit. I haven't really listened to any podcasts, read anything. I mean, I assume that everyone's talking about Joe Mixon, but he's a really strong play. I think you can play Zeke. I think you can play Saquon. If you do decide to fade one of those guys, you should probably have Mixon in that team. David Johnson's interesting at 7,100. I mean, the guy saw 10 targets last week. Atlanta is a team that we're always targeting as far as running backs in the passing game, 29th in running back DVOA. It is a massive discrepancy at the line of scrimmage, actually in favor of the Cardinals, which is very interesting because that is not normally the case with them. But same old thing with Arizona, low team total. They are underdogs. They are on the road. Like, it's really tough to, like, I love David Johnson. I don't love his price at 7,100 when we have Joe Mixon right there at 61. But yeah, outside of that, at the running back position, guys, I would expect Jalen Samuels to still be pretty popular, 5,200. This Pittsburgh team does not run the ball very much, probably plays into the hands of a guy like Jalen Samuels who's going to catch a ton of balls. So, I mean, sets up really well for plays. He could easily touch the ball, 17, 18 times. I agree with that projection. I think he's fine if you get down there. But again, like, opportunity cost, right? I still think that ending up in this mid-range, I always want to have a guy that has a massive ceiling in a running back slot, just because that's where I want to spend my money. That's where I want to get my floor. That's where I want to get my upside. Let's see what else we got here. Giants still technically breathing. I'm with you. Missed the John Brown homecoming last week when he was in KC. John Brown went to Pitt State. Nice. Some Pittsburgh people in the chat, huh? What's the difference between your run funnel column for positive and negative? Zeke's negative, Fournette's positive. Yeah, so I should probably talk about that. So a negative run funnel just means that the team is a lot better against the run than they are against the pass. So the only ones that I really care about are the ones that are basically on the tail. So Indy is very good against the run, yet they're not very good against the pass. So they have a red number here. That's just the difference between the two DVOAs. I could probably make this into a ranking. Maybe that'd be a lot easier to look at. Fournette is just the opposite. Washington hasn't been very good against the run, but they've actually been relatively good against the pass. So hopefully that answers your question. Six Sniper. Yeah, I want to hear the Saquon take. Okay, well, the Giants have no incentive this week, and it's the opposite for the Titans. If OBJ is out, they can focus on Saquon, and they're already fairly good against the running back. If OBJ does play, it takes away some touchdown equity from Saquon, and the Titans play to slow plays. Hey, I'm with you on the pace stuff for sure with Saquon. That's one of the big knocks, and they are good against running backs in the passing game. I get it, but Saquon has been battling through this type of adversity in some optimal situations the whole year, and I'm really done fading a guy that's going to touch the ball 28 times. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, man. Like, I do prefer Zeke if I had to pick one. And we'll see what happens in lineup construction. Where are we at here on time? All right, we should probably move to wide receiver at some point. The real Josh, I'm surprised Derrick Henry isn't getting much talk. Not on him, but the Giants are awful. Let's check out Henry. So Henry, 5K. The team runs a decent amount, obviously. It's pretty neutral. So the plays for the Tennessee team, kind of like Six Sniper said, they're a pretty slow-paced team, so don't hate that. But yeah, 18 touches. Is he that much worse than Jalen Samuel? Probably not, but he's not as involved in the passing game, and he's in a lot worse game environment. So I would assume in this price range that Jalen Samuels is going to be the guy that people kind of gravitate towards. Question on FanDuel, do you spend the extra $400 for Mixon to get to Fournette? It is a pretty good spot for Fournette. I won't lie. That's an interesting one. So I wasn't really considering Fournette because of his price at $7,500, and I think that Mixon's clearly underpriced. But yeah, I don't hate that, man. Especially on Fournette, it's so touchdown dependent on FanDuel that I think that it's interesting. So Mixon's price is definitely a lot different. I think there's an argument for just playing Mixon on DraftKings and then getting to Fournette on FanDuel. Yeah, man, I think you're on the right track there, man. Ridley revenge game. I like Vance too. Saquon's had to deal with Eli. Yeah, see, that's my main point too, Doozy. I think that Saquon's battled through some bad stuff as far as his game environment, his quarterback, all these different things, his offensive line for quite some time. So let's move over to wide receiver. So I mentioned that I think that Green Bay will be extremely low owned. Devontae Adams, it is worth noting that he does have the highest Whopper over the past 4 games. Had someone ask in the chat earlier what Whopper is. So Whopper is one of those stats that I think is probably one of the most important at the wide receiver position, just because it bakes into account air yards, it bakes into account target share. It's one of those Josh Hermsmeyer stats that's really solid. So that's definitely one of the things that I think I prioritize the most, because what we want at wide receiver, we obviously want volume, but we do also want targets that are super valuable. So I think that that's a really good way to capture that. So I think it's a great stat. In general, some of the teams or the players that look underpriced, I don't know. Are people talking about Kenny Stills this week? I hope not, because I really want to play him because I will be at the Vikings game, obviously. Like, the pace is ugly. Like, I hate playing these Miami guys, but 4,300 really stands out to me for a guy with this kind of Whopper. So 4,300, I think he's really strong. You guys might have, if you guys have listened to podcasts, you might have to let me know. I talked about him on the Pat Mayo show on Wednesday, but yeah, we'll see if he starts to grab some ownership. Fournette could rip this game up with you there. Julian Edelman lock button. What? Really? He's pretty safe. What's his price though? It shows you how much I've looked at some of these expensive wide receivers. So 7,200 for Edelman, a team that doesn't pass the ball very much. It is a pass funnel, I'll give you that. Game plays are great, like game environment's strong, low ADOTs. We like that for DraftKings scoring. If we're just looking at guys that are going to catch a lot of balls, I could see Edelman being in play. Not the Whopper I'd like to see from a guy that I'm trying to get a little bit more upside from, but I understand it. I think that if you're going to pay for a guy that's that expensive, so Edelman's at 7,200, I could see it being a reasonable pivot off of Amari Cooper. I definitely prefer T.Y. Hilton in that range, and then maybe try and get up to the Minnesota wide receivers instead. But yeah, I think that of that group, like if you're trying to target this high total game, I think it makes some sense. Let's see. I never looked at the Whooper stat until I joined the Discord. Now it's the first thing I look at. Yeah, it's a good stat, man. We like metrics here. Gallup, Jordy, Sneed. Yuck. I do like Gallup. Jordy and Sneed I might have to look at a little bit closer. Who do you forecast Slay and Rhodes to be shadowing this week? Yeah, so Slay is an interesting one, right? I think Slay is probably going to be on probably Zay Jones, right? Let's see what PFF has. Yeah, PFF has him on Zay Jones. As far as Xavier Rhodes, I still think that they're probably going to move guys around quite a bit. If I had to pick one, it's probably going to be Devontae Parker. I still think that Stills is the guy that I'm going to be attacking in this Miami offense. I think going back to him, especially at that price, is super interesting. And Minnesota's been beat over the top this year. So that's one thing that I always kind of like to touch on too. Miami's going to win this game. I hope not. I'd like to see the Vikings make the playoffs. I'm not even really a Vikings fan, but I wouldn't mind seeing them make playoffs. How do you get logos in the chat, Ellie? That's awesome. Vikings win. It'll be close. Let's see. This is a dream spot for Edelman. Let's hear a little bit more about Edelman, the real Josh. He wasn't really a guy that, I mean, I haven't looked at a ton of the super expensive wide receivers. I do think that it's going to be interesting if people decide to go to Juju, because I think there's a chance that Belichick tries to take him away instead of Antonio Brown. Not sure how popular that is. T.Y. over Cooper. See you at the Vikes game. Hey, we got some Minnesota people in the chat. Love that. Shoot me a snap or shoot me a text in Discord. We'll have a beer. Robert Foster thoughts. Whew. All right, so we should probably talk about this guy. So these Buffalo guys in general, I think are pretty interesting for value. If you really wanted to get super cheap, I think they'll go kind of under-owned just because the team total is so low. Isaiah McKenzie at 3,900. Like, I don't know if I really like any of these guys. I think if you're playing large field stuff, you'll get lower ownership on them for sure. Foster, I mean, massive ADOT on this guy, so he could catch a deep target. I could see that paying off. Not typically the kind of guy that I'm going to target on DraftKings. And against Detroit, again, like it's really hard to attack this Detroit team in general because there's not going to be a ton of plays in this game. Yeah, no problem, Nizzles. Thanks for being here, man. You see Silva's piece about the Amari fade against zone coverage? No, I've not. But I mean, anything Evan Silva writes, definitely think that you have to take notice of that. If the Amari Cooper thing against zone is a thing, definitely something to look into. Twitch has emotes for Thursday night games. Oh, okay, that's cool. Yeah, the emotes is something that I definitely need to get done. It's on the list for sure. Let's see. Has everyone already moved back to the game? It's already started. We'll keep going though. It's Thursday night football. It can't. Who likes watching Island games anyway? I'll have 0 Amari, and I'm completely fine with it. We'll see, man. I played Amari once this year, and it was when he was really chalky at like 4K and did nothing. So that's pretty much, I had my Amari taste for the year, and that was enough for me. But we'll see. He's kind of expensive now. So Amari, 7,500. His role is pretty insane, honestly. It's a pass funnel situation. I do like this game a lot. But let's talk about Michael Gallup. I actually think that he is super interesting in this same game if we want to pay all the way down. I think that he's one of my favorite cheap guys. I think Stills and Michael Gallup are the guys that I'm kind of locked into at the cheap end of the salary range right now. So Michael Gallup is another guy that has just a ton of air yards over the past few games. So if we're just looking at market share of air yards, he's one of those guys that is really popping. At 3,600 in a great game environment, I would much rather take a chance on Michael Gallup if it allows me to get in some of these elite running backs, get exposure to Dak, who I think is fine. Yeah, I think he's the leverage play, right? Like if people are going to play Amari, if people are going to play Zeke, definitely think that Michael Gallup is one of the best plays on the board. Taijuan Taylor is actually kind of interesting to me too. I meant to mention him before at 3,800. So a lot of people want to talk about Corey Davis. Actually, since like Tennessee started to get a little bit more healthy, Taijuan Taylor has been seeing a ton of targets. So he's another guy, like underpriced guy that has been popping kind of on the Whopper type metrics. So those are the cheap guys I'm on. As far as that side of things, I think you can probably make an argument for the San Francisco guys again. Maybe a guy like D.D. Westbrook. Pat mentioned him on the show earlier in the week. I think he makes some sense against Washington. But yeah, I think I'm on Stills and Gallup. This should be a fun week. Playing the min wide receivers versus Miami seems bad, and it appears popular. Are they going to be popular? Brutal. Oh, they're broadcasting the games on Twitch. That makes sense. Cool. Ty Freak. Did we miss a Ty Freak touchdown? I haven't opened this up yet. Oh, it looks like a deep pass. Did he score? Oh, it was No, it was Damian Williams. Who's got Showdown action tonight? I ended up playing NBA tonight instead of Showdown, so I figured I'd save myself some money. Really want to pivot to Boyd at the same price on FanDuel. Yeah, Boyd's an interesting one. I always prefer Boyd, actually, if AJ Green is playing, just because I don't know if he's the kind of guy that really can create a ton on his own. We've seen that a couple times this year. How do I redeem the free sub from Amazon Prime? Okay, so I was just talking about Kevin about this in the Discord before we jumped on. So if you do have an Amazon Prime account, you automatically get a Twitch Prime subscription for free. You should definitely be taking advantage of it. Problem is, Twitch doesn't make it very easy to do so. So if you're on my Twitch right now and you scroll down, I actually have a link to 2 different guides that will kind of tell you how to attach your Amazon account to to Twitch and kind of go from there. Once you get it attached, you basically just go to the subscription button, and then there'll be an option that says Amazon Prime subscription, something like that. It doesn't auto renew, so that's something that you definitely want to kind of keep an eye on. But yeah, it's free. You might as well take advantage of it. One of the best ways to kind of support me. So I would definitely appreciate that. All right, let's see. Yeah, Allie's already answering these questions. So you guys, Allie's on the ball, per usual. Damian Williams, second TD. Yeah, was he a thing in Showdown? I didn't really look at that part of the slate very much. I assume he was with Wear Out. Glad I gave Allen and, yeah, D. Williams at captain. He must have been cheap. Needs 7 Tyreek Hill points to win some Monday through Thursday GPPs. Yeah, the Monday through Thursday GPPs are great. So last year I played a ton of those, and any type of slate where you can kind of utilize late swap, I definitely think is strong. We'll talk about that a lot when we get to the playoff shows for sure. But yeah, let's move on to tight end since we're probably losing people back to the game at this point, which is totally fine. So tight end, per usual, I kind of like to do the barbell approach at tight end. I'm either paying all the way up for a guy like Ebron or Kittle on this slate, at least. Like I guess that's paying all the way up when we don't have Ertz, we don't have Kelsey. I think that those are the guys, the pay up options. I would expect Ebron to be extremely popular. I think people will chase Rob Gronkowski against Pittsburgh, since Pittsburgh's been so terrible against tight ends this year, 31st in tight end DVOA. I think he's fine at 5,800. Like, I still think that, so we talked about running backs being underpriced. I still think some of these elite tight ends are also underpriced. So that's kind of why I go with the approach of either paying all the way up or paying all the way down. The problem this week is there's really not a ton to pay all the way down for. I actually think that Vernon Davis is interesting with Jordan Reed out, 3,200, decent game environment. Jacksonville is another one of those teams that hasn't been very good against tight ends just over the past couple of years. So I think that they're interesting. I think anytime that Reed's out, Vernon Davis always seems to be at least in play. Ricky Seals air yards, another guy that I'm always looking at, but never really seemed to play with low team totals. At tight end, really prioritize higher team totals since it is so driven by touchdowns. You definitely want to look for a game where you think there's going to be touchdowns scored. Ideally, Kyle Rudolph at 3,500. I definitely think that he's interesting at the cheap ends. I've heard some people talking about Anthony Fursker. Yeah, so that's an interesting one, I guess. 2,900 definitely does a lot for your roster. 3 targets last week, 27 yards, 3 targets the week before. Did have a touchdown in that game. Yeah, I don't know. So the Giants, middle of the road against tight ends. Like, Tennessee doesn't throw a lot. The pace is bad. The team total is bad. I don't understand. Someone explain to me the Fursker play. I don't understand. Screaming Uzoma this week. I like Uzoma a lot better in that range. He's 3,600, so he's a little bit more expensive. But I feel like I mention this every slate. But yes, Oakland against tight ends is definitely a thing. Uzoma running a ton of routes, definitely something that I value at the tight end position. And again, Driscoll is not afraid to throw to his tight ends. 28% of his throws over the past year have been to the tight end position. For a little bit of context, Andrew Luck, we always talk about how he throws the tight ends a lot, only 26.8%. So much higher than a lot of these other guys. I think Uzoma, I really like some of these Cincinnati guys in general. Like, I think Mixon, pretty close to a lock in cash games. If you're paying down and you don't want to go all the way down to Rudolph, or you don't want to go all the way down to Vernon Davis, definitely think that Uzoma, if you have the salary, makes some sense for sure. Fursker definitely bageling. Yeah, I've taken a couple of zeros at tight end, so I'm not going to laugh too hard at that. Do you feel like you'll need 3 super cheap wide receivers to smash? Seems like a very tall order, or different at high stakes. Yeah, so it's always, for me, it's always different depending on what kind of game you're playing, right? So I'm playing a lot of single entry, mid to high stakes stuff, but the main thing is it's a really small field size. So I'm not playing against in these massive tournaments with 100,000 people. I think that you can afford to pay up for the safety at running back. So like last week, for instance, got like 13 points from all of my wide receivers. Had a bunch of guys under 4K. I'm kind of blanking on who they were at this point, but was still very much in the game because I had Zeke, I had Saquon, I had CMC. Not saying you ever have to play all 3 of them, but paying all the way down for a wide receiver position that has a ton of variance. Like, what if I get a bit, like I played Shepard, he got a touchdown. What if he doesn't get sat down and he ends up seeing a ton of targets? What if I get a big play from one of the other cheap wide receivers? I just would rather take variance at a position that I can spend a little less at. So that's kind of the main thought process with that. Like, to be completely honest, like, look at these salaries at wide receiver. Am I paying $8,500 for Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, Devontae Adams, a guy that is going to maybe get, I don't know, even looking past the raw projection, like, for them to completely bury you, like, I would just much rather pay a little bit more for Zeke or Saquon and know they're going to touch the ball a ton. Evan talked up first. Oh, okay. Got it. Maybe there's something I missed then with that one. I'll have to go back and look at it. Oh yeah, DeAndre Carter. That was fun. All right, guys. Any kind of final questions? I'm going to touch on defense quick, but then I will get you guys out of here. As far as the defense side of things, again, it's like the opposite at quarterback. I'm looking for matchups at the line of scrimmage that skew the other way. I'm also looking for pass attempts and high spreads, so that hopefully that the game flow is in the kind of the perspective that we'll see a lot of passing attempts and have a chance for interceptions, have a chance for sacks. So the best matchup at the line of scrimmage this week is actually Minnesota against Miami. Minnesota's 3,100, so they're definitely not cheap. Always want to pay down at defense when I can. Again, another position where there's a ton of variance. At defense this week, I don't know if there's like a clear, like fantastic option at the cheap end, to be completely honest. So it's crazy to say, but I actually think that Cincinnati is very much in play against Oakland. That's how little I think of Derek Carr and this offensive line right now. At least we know that there's going to be a decent amount of pace in this game. We should see a decent amount of pass attempts for Derek Carr. The offensive line, again, Cincinnati's giving up yards, giving up points. I don't care about any of that. I just want turnovers and a chance for a defensive touchdown. So 2,500, I think that they're fine. They are a home favorite in this game. If you're looking for something else that's super cheap, maybe Atlanta. I could see them. I mean, they're not even super cheap. They're 2,700, and at that point, you can get up to something like Buffalo, Baltimore. Like those are. I think that in general, Baltimore against Tampa Bay, really strong spot against Winston. Obviously, takes a lot of sacks, a lot of plays, a lot of pass attempts. Like that's the pay up spot for me. Is probably Baltimore. But the Falcons at 2,700 against Josh Rosen takes a ton of sacks. Throws a lot of picks. Like I get it, the pace isn't great. But I think they're fine at 2,700 as a home favorite again. There's not a massive favorite, which makes it a little bit more difficult for sure. So yeah, I actually think defense is kind of tough this week. Have I looked at the Saturday slate at all? I've not looked at it a ton, but we can talk about it a little bit. Let me know when you realize you're going back to Godwin, even in this shit matchup. Godwin's price didn't move a ton, did it? Let's look at Godwin. Where is he? He had 10 targets last week. Why is he not higher in Whopper? 4,900. So his price is still strong. The plays are good. Against Baltimore, it's just so tough, man. Like he's going to see Jimmy Smith, and even if he doesn't see Jimmy Smith, he's probably going to see, I don't know, this defense is scary. You're going to attack a guy that was extremely inefficient last week against one of the best offenses in the league. That seems bad to me. Falcons, yeah. So Oakland Ravens, Oakland defense. Let's look at them. Allie wants to see Oakland. Yeah, I mean, the other side of it, it's the same kind of thing. So I like where your head's at, Allie, because we're looking for good game environment. We're looking for pass attempts. My concern is Oakland doesn't pressure at all, but it is Jeff Driscoll. So I think there's worse plays for sure. I just prefer the other side because I think there's going to be more pass attempts and a better matchup at the line of scrimmage for pretty much the same price. Does anyone else get randomly kicked out of the Twitch feed? Are people getting kicked out of the Twitch feed? Let me know. I'll have to look into that. All right, so let me look at this Saturday slate. I haven't looked at it at all, to be completely honest, but let's see what we got here. Bring up the other part of my spreadsheet here. So Texans at Jets. Browns at Broncos. This is pretty gross. Seems like, it's a pretty difficult spot for the Jets for sure, in my opinion, against this Texans team. Like the Jets have taken a decent amount of sacks this year. I never really want to put a ton of stake into Darnold for sure. They just haven't been able to protect him very well. Just in general, I probably can go off of that now. Let's go back to this. It's just tough. Like, who do you stack the Jets with, right? Like, it's not a great situation. Like, Curse has really not been that great out of the slot this year. I think he's only topped 35 yards, like, twice the entire season. Anunwa has really underperformed in general. maybe Chris Herndon at tight end. I don't know. Like if this game was on the main slate, like I wouldn't have one guy from the Jets for sure. I still think that if you want to go to the Texans, it's the usual suspects, right? It's Watson, it's Hopkins, it's potentially Miller. All those other guys, I mean, it's a short slate, right? So you're basically looking for a touchdown from any of those other guys. At least it's somewhat condensed. But I mean, Hopkins is pretty expensive. It definitely limits what you can do with the rest of your roster. 8,700 seems pretty expensive for him, but we don't have like the massive running backs to pay up for either. Like it's Nick Chubb at 7,600, who's been using the passing game a decent amount. So I definitely think that he's interesting. I think Lamar Miller actually stands out as a pretty strong play, honestly, against this Jets team. At least interesting. So this other game, Denver and Cleveland. I honestly think that Lindsey is still the guy that I want from this offense. Super talented kid. He is used in the passing game quite a bit. Like I talked about this last week, like these wide receivers, like anyone that was projecting Cortland Sutton to just like step into all these Emmanuel Sanders targets, I definitely think that was kind of bad. Deshaun Hamilton up to 4,600. I think he's a pretty talented kid. Peter talked about him on the Sunday stream. If any of you guys are not checking out the Sunday streams, definitely doing yourself a disservice. Starting at 9 a.m. We have live streaming, kind of a live streaming marathon all the way up until lock. Myself, Manny goes on directly after me. I go on at 9 a.m. Eastern time. Manny goes on around 10:15, and then Ryan Hodge 11:30, and then Al Smizzle brings us right up until lock. Steve Boyton, thanks for the 100 bits, man. Appreciate that. Cam Pie 775 says Keenum sucks. Hey, there's a lot of people in Minnesota that don't think Keenum sucks, which is ridiculous. So after that game in prime time where a lot of people were talking about Cousins and how bad this offense looked, like people are legitimately saying around town, like we never should have got rid of Keenum. Do you guys understand that? Like, let's go back to this for a second. So Case Keenum, if we're talking about guys that have actually been very strong under pressure this year, like Case Keenum is right there. Kirk Cousins, not Case Keenum. Kirk Cousins is right there. If you guys had Case Keenum behind this offensive line, it would be insane how much worse this offense would be without Kirk Cousins. So one of the top guys as far as his yards per attempt while under pressure this year. I think that Kirk Cousins has been fine. Like he doesn't have a lot, like looking past Diggs, looking past Thielen, there's not a lot of playmakers on this offense, and their offensive line is horrendous. What do you want the guy to do? So yeah, that was kind of a long rant to just tell you guys that I'm not really that bullish on Case Keenum or that side of this offense. I think that I prefer to attack with Lindsey for sure. On the Browns side of this game, I think that Mayfield is really interesting, especially on a 2-game slate. Always like the plays that we get from this Cleveland team. They try and get the pace up quite a bit. Definitely think that there's a chance. Like if you think the Broncos are going to score points, like this is the game that I think I would rather have exposure to for sure. You do have the kind of the late night hammer. Obviously, you get to change your lineup if you think you're way behind. If for some reason this Jets game goes off, but I'd be shocked if this Cleveland game wasn't much higher owned, but yeah, kind of a gross 2-game slate. Jarvis Landry and Njoku are probably the guys I would pair Mayfield with. Quietly, Jarvis Landry, like I get it. Yeah, he buried me a lot this year too, but quietly they're starting to develop a little bit of chemistry. They've looked a lot better the last couple of weeks, so definitely think that that's interesting. You think there's any chance the Pats free James White? Maybe. It's possible. If we're just looking at the matchup for James White, New England, 4th most pass happy team. It is a pretty massive pass funnel. Yeah, Pittsburgh's actually been really good against running backs in the passing game this year, 6th best. But again, if you're trying to get access he's only 5,700 now. His price is finally at a spot where he's getting to that point where it might make a decent amount of sense. So doozy, maybe in GPPs, man, but not on a main team. All my Williams Showdown lineups I made as a joke at happy hour is winning all the money. Unreal. So you left, did you have like a dummy lineup in or something? What's his ownership? I can't wait to look at that after the stream. That's funny. All right, guys, going to kind of wrap things up a little bit. If you haven't already, make sure you are following the trifecta, right? You're following on Twitch. Hopefully you're subbing on Twitch. You're following on YouTube. Shout out Sports Geek. If you're not following Sports Geek or subscribe to his YouTube channel, definitely check out one of his many YouTube channels that have been very successful. We'll definitely get Sports Geek on the stream very soon here. And then, yeah, if you're on Discord, you know what's going on in there. There's a lot of great conversation that's happening each and every day, not just NFL stuff. But if you're not in the Discord and you're a Twitch subscriber, you're really missing out on a ton. So all the data sheets that we went through on this stream, you'll have access to that on Sunday morning when you're building lineups. There's a ton of other stuff in the works and other things that we're doing for the subscribers. We're doing some voice chat stuff. Like Discord's awesome. It attaches right to Twitch, so we know which people are subscribers and who has access to different channels, different voice channels. Go in there and hang out. Just kind of get a feel for this community that we're trying to build. I really appreciate all the support so far, guys. It's been a lot of fun. And then we will be back on Sunday morning with Peter Jennings. Always love doing those shows with CSU Ram, of course. You guys like those quite a bit. So we'll see you at 9 a.m. on Sunday morning. I believe that's going to be the next stream. We'll see if we get in a stream tomorrow for NHL. Can't remember if I put it on the schedule or not, but all right, guys, if that is probably going to do it. All right, good talk. See you out there.